Hello, family, friends, and fellow sojourners. I wanted to expand on our storyline with Ryan, our little baby that we had taken through prison ministries. He went back with his mother at the age of 26 months, and he was devastated, as were we. And we had insight as to what was happening to him. We didn't have direct contact with him, but we did with his grandmother in Denver, who was very aware of the things that were happening to him, and she was giving us feedback, and we were devastated, knowing that his needs weren't being met and that he was being abused. She called us in November of that year. He was taken on in March of 1991, and midsummer she called and said that she was taking care of him for the day and asked if we'd like to come and see him, and we did. And I really felt that had done more damage to Ryan than anything else, because he wanted to come home with us, and of course we couldn't take him home. He said the reason that we wouldn't take him is because he was a bad boy, and I said, who told you that? And he said Monica, his mother, had told him that. And of course I was devastated, as was his grandmother, and I tried to assure him, you're not a bad boy. Then he said, well, why don't you take me home? He didn't understand why. But in November, his grandmother called and said that his birth parents, both of them, were going back to prison, and said that she was going to fight for custody. Now, the reason that her name was Kathleen, didn't take Ryan when he was first born was because she was already caring for Monica's oldest son, who was 12 at the time, that she'd had when she was a teenager. So Kathleen and her husband stepped up and took custody of him right away, and they were raising him. And then also Ryan had a little sister or a big sister that was a little over a year older than he was, that they were raising, in addition to the fact that they had 8 children themselves. So she was overwhelmed, and that's why she didn't take Ryan. So when she said she was going to fight to get permanent custody of him, I knew that that was not a good situation for Ryan nor her and her family. And I said, let us fight to get him and to adopt him. So we went up to Denver and picked Ryan up, and he was pretty reserved, different by far than when we lost him in March of that year, because God only knows what he was exposed to. So when we brought him home, the first thing he said when he got in the car was, Bernie keeps his stash under his hat. And of course, I wasn't sure what that meant, but my husband explained that to me later, and I just thought, here he's going to be 3 in a couple of months, and he already knows about stash under a hat. So, but we took him home and, held him and cried and laughed and had mixed emotions about what we were in for, in terms of the trauma that he'd endured and what we were going to have to do to undo that, and the court system and hiring a lawyer to fight for him, all of that. Well, Ryan was very afraid. He was afraid that Monica and Bernie would come and get him in the middle of the night. He could not be reassured that that wasn't going to happen. And quite frankly, I was pretty concerned about it too. In fact, I was living in absolute fear, because we had been contacted by the police department in Denver and in Colorado Springs, as well as the police department up in Oregon, where Monica had been tried for something that the actual charges had to be dropped because the undercover cop that was going to testify against them had mysteriously been killed. So I'll leave that up to your imagination. But also her parental rights for another child that she had up in Oregon was terminated at the same time. So that was her history, that she never took responsibility for any of her children. But we decided that that was the best route for us to take, would be to fight them. Both of them had free lawyers. They were both incarcerated, so they had free lawyers. And we were paying, because of being a taxpayer, we were paying for their lawyers as well as our own. But in the meantime, when we were trying to reassure Ryan that he didn't need to be in fear, we lost our car keys with our house keys on them. Now, my imagination, active imagination, stated that maybe we'd left him in the trunk of our car when we got groceries and that they were there for anyone to grab. And if Monica and Bernie were watching our home or having someone else watch our home, they had access to the keys. So I was very upset about it. We tore the house apart, we tore the cars apart, and just knew that they were not in our grasp. So I was quite concerned, and really, when I was ministering to him and trying to reassure him deep down, I was just as scared as he was. But as the Lord would have it, I had a dream one night, and the Lord revealed to me where the keys were. So when I got up that morning, I immediately ran down the stairs, ran out of the house in my flannel nightgown, ran around the garage, went to a flower bed, and just like in my dream, I took my arms and I laid the flowers to the side, and there were the keys. I couldn't believe it. So I called my husband. I said, I found the keys. And I explained where they were, and he said, oh, I vaguely remember working with the sawhorses and a piece of plywood. And he says, I remember now that I took the plywood and I went like this, and took my tools off and went like this. And he said, and the keys must have been on that piece of plywood, and they just fell right down into the flower bed. Well, I tell you, the light came on for him. He realized what had happened and where those keys were. But it took a dream from God himself to settle me down and to remind me that he was in control of all things, and that he had the key to everything. And it made me have a vision to this day, unlike any other thing that could have calmed my spirit any faster than to know that God, even in my dreams, was speaking to me and ministering to me, as well as to Ryan, and knowing that God was going to protect us. So I hope you appreciate this story. Please follow me up by a subscription if you haven't already, or share this with your friends and family. God bless you, my friends. Take care. Bye-bye.